So we're back talking about our engineering ethics assignment. One thing I did want to mention about the engineering ethics assignment was the case that was presented. One of the more extreme options is tell the public. Hold a press conference. Go tell everybody. And I did want to mention a case of something very similar that happened in the real world, which is the Citicorp building. Has anybody ever heard of the Citicorp building case? Okay. So you ought to look it up. It's really interesting. The Citicorp case is it involves the Citicorp headquarters in Manhattan, in New York City. And I'm actually going to pull an image up of the Citicorp building because it's kind of interesting. Okay, so if you look at the Citicorp building, the structure itself is kind of strange. Because if you look at the columns, let me pull this one up. If you look at the columns of the building here on the bottom, the main load-resisting columns are not on the corners of the building, they're on the edges. So, that kind of looks kind of strange if you think about it. Imagine a table where the legs are in the middle of the board, not on the corners. It just doesn't really sound right. But there's a very specific reason for it. The reason why is because they wanted their skyscraper, but they also had to leave the site of this local church undisturbed. So the only way to do that was to actually begin the skyscraper well above the church and actually locate the support columns on the edges and not the corners. It's actually a really impressive engineering feat. Now, the guy who designed it was a brilliant structural engineer, and a lot of his work and a lot of his development in the world of structural engineering is the stuff we still use today. But he made a big mistake on this project. He designed the building for direct face wind loading, so loading either this face, or so on and so forth. This, undergrad student, I believe at Princeton, she needed a case study for her senior design in I think architecture, and she picked this, and she looked at quartering winds where it hit the corner, and then did the trig to split that up onto the each face of the building. And if you take that and you combine it with the fact that a hurricane was headed towards New York at this time, the building was going to fall down. It was going to go. The engineer who was responsible for the project, he designed the connections using welded plates, and then when they actually built it, they used bolted connections. His office approved the change, but he didn't. He didn't know about it. It was one of his underlings that approved the change. And that design change with the quartering winds and the hurricane coming, that building was going to fall down. And it was a problem. The engineer who was responsible for the project, he walked into the Citicorp boardroom to the board of directors and said, "You got a problem. You don't fix this, the building's coming down, period." And convinced them that they needed to repair it. And what they did is they actually repaired it overnight. They worked through the night, removing wall panels and welding cover plates onto the connections of the building. So now this building is probably one of the most stable buildings in New York City, maybe in the world, because now it's not coming down at all. But they didn't warn the public. Now they told the local neighborhood officials like the fire department and EMS and folks like that. They gave them a heads up that, hey, here's what's going on, but they didn't want to cause a public panic. Go tell everybody that, oh, there's a multi-story skyscraper that might fall down. It'd be all right. So there was something to be said about the fact that they took their responsibility to ensure the safety and welfare of the public well. They took it seriously, but they also addressed the problem without causing a panic. One final interesting point about this story, the engineering student who discovered the problem, first of all, took a lot of guts to essentially call the Albert Einstein of structural engineering at the time and say, something's messed up with your design. That took some guts. And the first thing that he did was he said, you don't have a clue what you're talking about, and hung up the phone. All right? But then independently, he did the check and found out she was right. She didn't find out that she actually saved everybody for about 30 years. Because what happened was, it's New York City, fast forward a couple decades, you're at a party, you got some engineers and some architects, you start throwing some liquid courage around. Next thing you know, there's somebody from the New Yorker there, and people start telling stories. Next thing you know, an article shows up in the New Yorker, and we all find out about it. So I'm not kidding. That's what happened. Somebody got too drunk at a party and spilled beans, or otherwise we never would have known about it. So yeah, alcohol leads to ethical case studies. That's oh, goodness. All right. Okay, so let's talk about housekeeping and bookkeeping for the next little bit. Okay, so today you have your homework to do. Hopefully you've already submitted it. It is really short, and it should be pretty brief and to the point. Okay. Today, what I'm going to talk about is the last sort of senior engineering seminar related topic of the semester, which is the interview. Okay. So what I want to do is talk about the interview process, what you should, do's and don'ts, so on and so forth. I want you all to be ready. I was actually speaking with a practicing engineer not a few minutes ago at a pretty reputable firm who's actually, they are hungry right now for H&H engineers. So if you're interested, they want to hire people now. What's that? Yeah, like water. Yeah, so hydraulics and hydrology. Yeah, so if you all are interested, they are hungry for H&H engineers and folks who have experience with GIS. So if you all are interested in that, talk to me afterwards, and I can give you some contact info and get that started. But they really want to hire some folks. I think the passage of the road bond in West Virginia, regardless of your political beliefs, one way or another, just put you all in about the best possible position you could be. You are senior civil engineering students in the state of West Virginia. When that thing passed, regardless of your political beliefs, y'all should have been at the bar, because that is jobs for the people in this room. I'm not kidding. So it's just something to keep in mind. You all are sitting very pretty for employment down the line. So you should be very happy about that. Okay. Let's talk about what's coming down the line. Okay, so November 1st, okay, is the Etiquette Dinner, okay? I'm actually going to contact Career Services tomorrow, make sure that they know that everybody in here should go to it. I am going to take attendance for it. It's a free meal, it's a free good meal, so you at the very least, that should entice you to come. But what they're going to discuss at that Etiquette Dinner, yes, sir? It starts at 4:30. So it occurs during class time, and I think it ends at like 6:20. So I didn't hear anything about that. I didn't hear it. Well, you'll be, at the very least, you'll be well fed, for foundations. Okay. I am going to take attendance at the Etiquette Dinner. You do need to come dressed up somewhat well. That's one of the things, that's expected. But they're going to teach you proper dining etiquette, which is important during the interview process. If they take you out to lunch, you need to know how to behave yourself. And that's one of the things that they're going to teach you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the project. Okay? So here's the deal. Next week, I'm going to give you all some basic outlines of your project next semester. And I've already told many of you that it's going to be a structural engineering project in nature because, hi, that's what we're doing. But, so that's what I'm going to do on Wednesday. But we sort of enter a little bit of a questionable lecture schedule after that, because from then on, we start to get to a point where it's up to you. I'm going to introduce the 453 project on the 25th of October. Now, there will be assigned deliverables and specific benchmarks that you must meet next semester to successfully navigate your project. But that being said, senior design is a little bit of a different experience than what you've done in some of your previous courses, because it's not me coming in and say, okay, you've got homework 1 or homework 2. No, 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 no. It's, let's say I'll make up a date. March 15th, your alternatives report's due. You all figure it out, okay? Now, I'm not going to, bless you, I'm not going to say I'm going to completely turn you over and just say, bye, figure it out, we'll see you in March. But it does start to become a little more on you than it is on me to start to produce work. That's the point, is to turn you all from students into engineers, okay? So that's what the 453 experience is all about, actually putting you in a, as real as we can be in academia, a real-world engineering scenario, and for you all to produce a feasible design. All right? Now, let's say this. So I'm going to introduce the concept on October 25th, and then we're not going to meet again until November 8th. Now, that's November 8th. How many meetings do we have between November 8th in this course and the end of the semester? And the answer is not many, okay? So I really don't expect for you all to get massive amounts of headway done on your senior design project the semester before you have senior design. So I say to be determined on November 8th and November 15th because I want you all to think about something, okay? We all are going to meet November 8th and November 15th, and then 2 more times before the end of the semester. I'm curious, we mentioned this last time, I'm curious if you all want to maybe do some FE review. Definitely. Now, we can do that if you want, but I cannot review the entirety of the FE exam in, 3 or 4 lectures. Not possible. But what I can do is review some choice topics that you all are interested in. I want you to think about it. What topics do you think you would get most value from? What do you all want to see? Okay? What's that?
Econ and dynamics.
Econ and dynamics. I just said I can't review the entire exam, and thermo's not on the civil exam, so.
So we just have everything except for you, Nichols, and Hunt. Everything.
What?
I'm saying every other class that those 3 did not teach.
See, unlike his statement, you're all the way over there, so it probably didn't pick up on the microphone. Look, think about it. Let's revisit this next week, and let's figure out what we're going to do. There is a chance that there is a presentation at the end of the semester. There's a chance that I mix that up a little bit. I might have you all presenting something a little different. We'll see. I haven't totally made up my mind yet. But we'll see on that. Your deadline for homework number 3, I did make a mistake. Last week I said that was due on November 1st. It's wrong. It's due on November 8th. So you got a little more time on your contemporary issues. Which, by the way, contemporary issues topics, only about half of you have submitted topics. So what I've done, if you look on Blackboard, there's a list of, and it says like date and time, and then it says topic. So, and I think I did 2 of them because I'm trying to do it quite regularly. But if you check Blackboard, what you will see are those are the topics that have already been picked. Okay, so if you have already submitted a topic, you should see your topic. If not, you need to submit a topic, and the sooner you submit that topic, the better. Okay. Sound good? All right. Let's talk about our last seminar-related topic for the semester, which is the interview process. Okay? What's that? All right. This is important for you, period. Okay? You all want to get a job. Okay? But whether or not you want to go directly into employment, whether or not you want to go to grad school, or what have you, you need to understand proper interview skills. The engineer at the firm that I was talking about earlier, but I'm trying to remain confidential, but he said something to the tune of they've had potential employees, potential students who wanted jobs come in, you know, with hoodies and headphones on throughout the interview. It's like, you know, like where'd the dress up and having the portfolio with you and having resumes on hand and, you know, presenting yourself in a professional manner. Where did that happen? Well, that didn't happen. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to get some of that stuff out of the way. I want to talk about some very fundamental things that everybody in this room should be ready for when they get to the interview. Okay? So a couple things. All right? An interview is, I mean, they are trying to assess you, but at the same time, you are trying to assess them as well. I mean, if you're interviewing at a given company, I mean, it's a two-way street. Not only do they may or may not, they maybe want you to work there, but you also have to want to work there as well. I mean, I'll mention a personal experience. I had a job over one summer where I spent some time in the Gulf of Mexico doing GPS positioning for the oil and gas industry. So I spent about a month and a half on oil rigs and platforms and boats and whatnot in the Gulf. It was a very amazing experience. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. Now, ask me, did I want to work for that company full time? No, I didn't. I enjoyed the people that I worked with. I didn't mind the food. I enjoyed the experience. You know, it was definitely an adventure. But when it came down to it, I actually just didn't enjoy the job, the actual job. It was little more than copying and pasting numbers into Excel for 12 hours a day. That's what it was. And that part I couldn't stand, and I couldn't do it. Now, you know, throughout my interview, they were trying to get to know me. They were trying to understand whether or not is this somebody we want to fly all the way out to Houston, train for 3 weeks on software, safety procedures, etc., you know, cart him out to the Gulf of Mexico and have him spend a month or 2 months out there working for us. They wanted to know whether or not they wanted to make that investment in me. But at the same time, I wanted to know whether or not this is something I wanted to do. It was something I wanted to do for that summer. I was very intrigued. I was done with the experience, and then I was really done with the experience because I didn't want to do it anymore. But there's something to be said about that interview process, okay? So if you want an overarching general piece of advice throughout the interview process, you need to be putting your best foot forward, your best presentation, your rehearsed answers. You want to present yourself in as professional a manner as you can. This is your chance to impress them, okay? Now, that doesn't mean not be yourself. I mean, you need to be yourself, not just for your sake, but for their sake as well. You don't want to deceive them. At the same time, I mean, again, this is a two-way street. You want to make sure that you want to work for this company as well. So you don't want to be focused on trying to, you know, think, well, instead of giving them your honest answers, well, maybe I need to give them the answers that they want to hear. No, just be yourself, okay? Be yourself, be honest and direct with your answers, okay? Another piece of advice. This thing right here, I just leave it in your car. You know, I have here turn it off, not in silence. I'd almost just leave it in your car. Don't take your cell phone with you. You know, what, you have something more important than your interview, than your future career? You see what I mean? There's something more important. No, there's not. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point I'm talking about. This is the most important aspect of your day, is this interview. You don't need to bring your cell phone with you. Just don't bring it. Let's see. Okay. All right. A couple other things. These are just some different different things to bring up. somebody introduces themselves, say hi, hi, I'm Greg Michelson. You say, hey, nice to meet you, Mr. Michelson. That's, oh, no, call me Greg, okay? Until then, stay formal until they give you the end to say, oh, call me Greg, or call me Brian, or call me whatever. But keep it formal at the beginning. Normally, I would say, hi, my name's Greg Michelson. I teach structural engineering courses here at Marshall, to the person who's right here, but he's not here. I know.
We know how he operates.
Okay. When you talk to somebody, you look them in the eyes. Okay. Say, hi, how are you doing? Look them in the eyes. Another thing, they're going to ask you questions. This is an interview. Okay. For two pieces of advice. One, I would go through some sample interview questions. I've got a boatload of potential interview questions on the web, and I posted on Blackboard. And one of them that I think is really important is there's actually a document that lists interview questions that Marshall students have got. You all are students at Marshall, so these are folks who, after they've been done interviewing, these are questions that they got asked. So we might look at some of those here in a little bit. Yes?
I was looking up where it says the Mr. Michelson, so I was imagining you as a Miss Michelson. And so say we go into an interview with someone and they don't identify with the gender we assume. And I say, I was to call you Mr. Michelson, but you wanted to go by Miss Michelson. Do we just turn around and leave and pretend that like we never even got the call because we just royally sat on it? Like it's done, it's over? Or do we just apologize profusely?
That is a fantastic question.
It really is. I mean, it's a really important question. I'll say this: in your interview, in your setting up with your, in the beginning, initial stages of planning, I mean, usually you'll know something like you'll be meeting with, John Smith, or you'll be meeting with this person. So you should have a general idea.
We're meeting with someone named like Morgan or Taylor that can go either way. So we're very unsure. Like I'm saying everything is against us knowing.
Nice to meet you.
I know.
Hold on. Just nice to meet you.
In our field, it's not a typical issue. I mean,
Hold on. Let me say this, and I understand what you're getting at. There's a, you don't want to offend somebody, and that is a real and honest line that's there that you don't want to step over. So, if something like that actually does happen, just say nice to meet you, and just leave it there. I don't know that I have a better piece of advice than that, honestly. But so yeah. A couple things. So like I said, I was going back to those interview questions that are posted online. Don't blurt something out. If they ask you a question and it's a tricky one, or it's something that requires a little bit of a prolonged answer, if they ask you, take a moment. I'm not saying sit there for hours and just in silence, in awkward silence, but take a moment, think about what you're going to say, and then respond. Another thing, this is a funny one. Know a little bit about the company that you're applying to. This last little bullet on this slide, I am a professor, which means I have served on search committees. Okay, so that you are oriented a little bit about what I'm talking about. When you apply to be a university professor, first thing that happens when a particular job posting is created is what is called a search committee. A search committee is convened. And a search committee consists of a few other professors, and their job is to be the initial screeners of applicants. It's a very normal process. Okay? So I've served on search committees for faculty positions. And you have a phone interview, and they'll say, so how's the weather in Virginia? Well, you're in Western Virginia, right? Or even better, when they say, so where's Marshall?
I don't know if you can hold him to that standard, because my history teacher got pulled over by the police in Texas, and they said you had to pay the license plate. He's from West The sergeant looked at him and said, "Get out of here."
Well, that's the Texas State Highway Patrol. We're talking about what your ability is within the interview. Let's just put it like this: if they interviewed for my company, I wouldn't hire them. How about that? So, but a couple of things. I mean, like, don't do that. But really, you want to try and know as much about the company that you're applying to as possible. It leads into some strategies that you all can employ down the line in your interview. But you want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. I mean, you don't want to apply at some company. If you're interested in being a structural engineer, all we do is heavy geotech. So I didn't want to do that. So, yes.
Actually, had a question that was
No, go ahead.
pretty right on for that. He was actually right over here to West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And they sat down and they asked, what do you know about our skill making process? Not a whole lot, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they ask.
But then, yeah, I mean, with where you're at, I mean, I think you were like a freshman or sophomore at the time, right? So nobody should have expected you to have senior level engineering student requisite knowledge. So, yeah. But you got the job, so you did something right. All right. Okay. Other couple points. I'd have a list of questions with you when you go to the interview. It is customary at the end of an interview to ask, they'll say at the very end, they'll say, "Do you have any questions for us?" And I'd have some. Okay. First off, if you don't have any, you're probably not that interested in the job. And if you're not showing outward interest in the job, you think they're going to show outward interest in you? You gotta think about that. And I'm not saying pepper them with questions, but I mean things about salary, about expectations, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's that out there to have some questions ready. And I'm going to show you some example questions. Okay, here down the line, stuff you should think about. Another thing, contact your references, and by references, I guess I'm talking about me.
Basically.
Give them some heads up, okay? I'll be honest with you, and nothing bugs a reference more than anything when they get some random email that says, "Oh, they applied for a job and you need to fill this thing out." Thanks for the heads up, I mean, your references should be, in regards to getting a job and going through the interview process, your references, they should be your ace in the hole. You're selecting people who are going to give you references to your character, to your technical abilities. You're going to hopefully pick folks who are giving you strong reference. The last thing you want to do is not give them a heads up. Definitely make sure they're aware, hey, you might be getting an email in a couple weeks from so-and-so engineering company asking about me. Just so you're aware. I mean, I'm a busy guy, and even if I didn't take it personally, the last thing that I would want to do, I would feel horrible if I just didn't see the email. 2-3 weeks go by and you don't get the job because I wasn't looking for it. I don't want that to happen. So, and none of your references would either. So please give them a heads up. Okay? All right. Another thing, be early, and I mean early. Okay? Be 20 minutes early. You're going to be going to an office building or some location you've never been to before, so you never, oh my goodness, you never want to be late. Do not be late for your interview, period. Okay? You want to try and be, I'd say about 20 to 30 minutes early, half an hour early. I mean, if you've never been to that location before, it'll give you a chance. I say it allows you to get lost. If you're driving to a location and you take a wrong turn, it gives you a little bit of a buffer. Also, you don't want to be going to the interview like, did I make it? Did I make it? You don't want to be like that going into an interview that might shape the rest of your career. be early, okay? You definitely don't want to be late in the days of Google Maps where you can Google Earth the office location and see it and virtually walk in and sit down in the office. You don't want to say, well, I was late because I couldn't find the place. You could find anything. And the only thing that you couldn't find is if you all were getting a job at the CIA and there was some blacked out sign on Google Maps like, I couldn't find it. Why not? It's classified. So yeah, you certainly don't want to be late, okay? It's going to sound silly. Practice your answers to your questions out loud, okay? There's going to be practice questions on Blackboard. Read them out. Come up with an answer. Actually say it. Actually verbally talk about your answers. Get it out. There's a big difference between thinking out an answer and actually speaking an answer. I mean, I guarantee it's happened to me. It's happened to anybody who's done any amount. How many of you have done any sort of public speaking that you didn't rehearse beforehand and you went, oh, God, that was horrible? I'm seeing some hands being raised, okay? Now, everybody that has done that, I mean, try and think of a time where you engaged in some public speaking avenue where you actually did, rehearse it. You actually did review it and actually did do the work to say, guarantee it went better. It went better, okay? If you're sitting there in your apartment just mumbling to yourself the answers to these questions, it matters, okay? Send thank you emails, thank you letters. Follow up, okay? Let them know that you appreciated their time. Let them know that it makes them aware that you are still interested in the position, okay? If you've got some crazy travel expenses, usually employers will reimburse you for that during the interview stage, so just something to be aware of. That's not that big of a deal in the world. I mean, if you've got an interview for a job in Cleveland, and they either drive you out there, rent you a car, or you have to rent a car, that they should reimburse you for that. So that's something to be aware of. So, okay, let's talk about phone interviews. How many of you have ever done a phone interview? Okay, so we got a few of you who've done a phone interview. I got some advice here. I'm curious. First off, it's going to sound silly. Wear your suit. Seriously, dress up. I'm not kidding. Dress up. Get in that mindset, okay? If you are sitting there on your phone interview in your PJs with Call of Duty on the flat screen and the Cheesy Poofs bag right here, I'm telling you, look, if you have that natural ability, that natural charisma to ace through the phone interview regardless, hey, more power to you. But honestly, if you get into that mindset, wear your suit, sit up straight, sit at a desk, have your resume in front of you as if it was a real interview, I promise you, you will perform better, okay, period. And a phone interview is pretty critical because when you're performing phone interviews, they are trying to screen candidates out. They've got a list of half a dozen good candidates, and what they want are the 2 or 3 great candidates that they want to bring in for an interview. They are looking for a reason to knock you off that list, okay? And the last thing that you should do is screw up what could be a slam dunk, You've got well-rehearsed answers to very typical questions. You have the ability to get yourself in that frame of mind, and you don't do it. I'm sorry, that's on you. That's not on us, You need to take some responsibility. My advice, don't use a speakerphone. Don't use, I say don't use a hands-free device, but I'm a little, iffy on that. I mean, for instance, I have a Bluetooth headset that, from what I understand, is very clear and it's very audible. I almost trust it in some instances more than I do my actual just holding my phone. But I would use either a very well-trusted hands-free device or your phone as is. Don't do that. Don't have your phone like that and do that. because then you're going to be rubbing up on your phone. And yeah, so don't hold the phone with your shoulder or your chin or your hand. Just hold your phone, okay? Make sure your phone is charged. You're laughing, but everybody who's laughing is going, I could see that happen. Charge your phone.
What if you accidentally hang up on them? Like you're holding your phone and it turns on and your cheek touches in. That's happening.
That's the same as the wrong pronoun. Just quit. It's over.
So hold on. Let me see something. Let me see something. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, you need, oh, no, okay, you got an Android. Never mind. I was going to say, you need to get an Android, but you have an Android.
It's just my face.
So now we've got fighting words. iPhone versus Android, right? If you are concerned about that happening, in all seriousness, I would consider a Bluetooth headset. Seriously, I mean, I have one that I think the audio clarity is about the same as I get on my headset, and that's happened to me too. I'm joking. I was joking with that, but in all seriousness, it's happened to me too, and I'm sure it's happened to everybody. So that's a way you can avoid that. So yeah. Okay. Formal interview. Okay. Dress to impress. I'm sure you all have heard that saying. What is it? Dress for the job that you want, not the job that you've got. You've heard that. Well, in an interview, that definitely is the case. You definitely want to dress to impress. Honestly, the only instances where I would say that not fully dressing up is appropriate is, let's say you know that you're going to be going to a job site, or something like that during your interview. So it might behoove you to maybe have some proper attire for that experience. Other than that, you need to be dressing up. Period. As nice as possible. Okay. Firm handshake. Okay. Let me see your hand. You don't want that to happen. That is bad. Right there. Firm handshake. Okay.
Put it in there.
Hold on.
Show me that posture. Yeah.
Does this look like somebody who wants a job?
That's someone who's already got it. That's confidence.
Because that's confidence. They're like, you're giving me this job. No, sit up straight, okay? Another general piece of advice, if they offer you a glass of water or a bottle of water, just take it, okay? Just take it, say thank you, and all that. Another really important piece of advice, okay, seriously, this is another important piece of advice. I highly recommend that you take a portfolio with you, like a notepad or something like that, and a pen, okay? If you're sitting there at the interview and you're, twirling, you break out the fidget spinner and all this, it gives your hands something to do. You can have your pre-written questions written out on your note sheet. You can have a place to have your resume if you need it, references. It gives your hands something to do that isn't awkward. You've got the notepad, you've got the pen, you've got something to do. It's a professional posture that works out quite well. So make sure that you have that with you. Okay? Take notes during the interview on any key pieces of information that they spit out, on duties, on salary, on so on and so forth. Have extra copies of your resume and your references and so on and so forth. Recognize that the interview is not over until you are gone. Okay? And what I mean by that is there's the formal in-person interview where you're sitting at the desk and there's the supervisor asking you the questions. But then if you're being walked around and introduced to giving people, that's still the interview. Okay? You're given the tour of the building, you're going out to lunch with folks, that's still the interview. Okay? The interview is over when you are in your car and gone. Okay? Recognize that. Okay? Make sure that you are in professional mode and putting your best foot forward from beginning to end. Okay? All right? All right, let's look at some sample interview questions. And I only, with the tech issues I was having, I mean, there's plenty more on Blackboard, but I wanted to pull this one up. These are interview questions. Once, oh my goodness. Okay, somebody pull up supplement 8.2 on their computer. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so if you all, first off, everybody should pull up supplement 8.2. This is the one that has interview questions that have actually been asked to Marshall students. And some of them even reference particular locations. Look, I don't have an assignment on this. You can review this or not. I strongly recommend that you do. I strongly recommend that you go through these and come up with some responses. I mean, the dreaded one is on there. What's your biggest weakness? Don't say I work too hard. What did you say? Did you say those dreamy eyes? It's a tough question, and it's a tough question that there's no perfect answer for. And honestly, you'll find that a lot of interview questions are like that. There's no perfect answer, and they're not even really interested so much in your answer as much as they are how you respond, and actually the way you handle yourself, the way that you communicate. Does anybody, I mean, like for instance, what's your biggest weakness? How many people have been asked that during an interview? All right? It's not a fun question, isn't it? But it's something you really ought to think about, you know, and have a good answer, you know. I've been asked that question before, and I'll go ahead and tell you what my answer was. What is it? You looked at me like now we'll know his kryptonite. Now, like we needed this last semester when he taught the formables. I remember in my interview I said something to the tune of, "I'm not big on confrontation. I don't like confrontation." And
We noticed.
now what does that mean? Now I'm going to confront you about it.
You're not very, what's the word? What? You're not very.
Tell you what, I'm just going to go cry in the corner. Is that right?
Authoritative, or what's the word? What did they tell SpongeBob to be abrasive? You're not very abrasive. Be assertive.
I guess we're
Like
saying,
assertive,
I guess
yeah,
we're
that
saying
too.
there's Dr. White when you meet him as professor, and then there's you.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to respond to this?
That's not bad. I mean, yeah, for me, that's not bad. You're a
Well-
teacher for him.
Yeah.
Well, but I'll continue my answer a little bit.
Yes, continue.
What I said in the interview is that I don't really like confrontation, but because of that can create some problems, because there is a point when you get into professional interactions where you reach a point where you have an issue and you need to deal with it. You need to assess the issue. I'm not saying be a jerk about it, but even if you're working on a project and there's details that you haven't been considering, it's like, guys, we got to talk about this, you know, and you kind of have to develop a means to assess confrontation professionally and deal with it. That was what I said, okay? You need to have an answer for questions like this. These are questions you could get asked. I mean, don't take it from me. That list, that came from Marshall students, okay? If you all don't come up with or research this list, research other lists, and develop, you know, your own responses to this, I mean, you're shooting yourselves in the foot, okay? So just something to keep in mind. Okay, what about your questions? Questions that you should have for your employer at the end of the interview, okay? If you're asking them, you know, what do I do? Well, what do y'all do? What does this company do? That's bad, okay? But you can ask some specifics on your duties, okay? What type of projects do you think that I'll be working on? What type of work do you see me working on in the next few months or year or so on and so forth? Office location, I mean, hopefully you know where you are at the interview, but maybe you're interviewing at the Huntington office for a job in Cleveland. You need to know that, okay? You know, what's the workload going to be? You know, is there going to be a lot of travel with this job? I think that's important. You know, are you going to be working out of the office, or are you going to be going out in the field in Iowa or Indiana or somewhere like that? This is important, okay? When do I start? You know, when does this job start? I mean, what if the job needs to start on April 30th? You go, well, I got finals coming that week, you know? You got to know that. You know, who would I report to? Who would I work with? You know, what's the structure of the company? How is a given project handled? If you're looking at actually the point where we're talking about employment, what's the deal with the benefits? Is there a retirement package? Is there health insurance? What's the deal with life insurance? I know that this is stuff that you might not think is important. Trust me, it is. Okay. These types of aspects can make the difference between, if you happen to have 2 job offers, which one do you pick? This matters, okay? You know, what's the deal with compensation? How am I paid? You know, how's overtime paid? Are there, do you all handle, will you you know, if I get my PE, will you all give me opportunities for continuing education? You know, so on and so forth. Am I going to need a license in one state or another? I mean, there are engineers out there who are licensed in 10, 12, 13 states. That's a lot of money. That's actually, I mean, you take one state's licensing fees and just multiply it by 13. Imagine having to pay that every year. That's a lot of money. You know, is my firm going to cover that or not? That matters. Any general stuff on the equipment available, what your job requirements are going to be. You really need to think of this stuff. And also, I mean, I'm looking at this list. I have here a list. You kind of also got to think about you. You're going to have different questions for your requirements and your circumstance than you are, or you, okay? So you need to think about this stuff. This is your life. It's not my life. I know where I work, you know, so you need to think about this. Couple etiquette, behaviors that you should consider. Always say your full name. Hi, I'm Greg Michelson. I teach structural engineering courses here at Marshall University. When you're being introduced or someone new walks into the room, or you're being interviewed, somebody walks in, stand up. Stand up and shake their hand, look them in the eye and introduce yourselves. Don't just, what's up, man? Don't do that. Don't do that. Show respect, okay? One thing, don't say thank you over and over and over again. Show, be respectful, say thank you, but don't do it over and over again. Make sure, if it's appropriate, that you're thanking each person in the room, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I'm actually not going to talk about this very much. What you should do at the interview lunch or the interview dinner. Why am I not talking about this very much? Because you have the etiquette dinner. So I don't really think that this is worth mentioning, but there's a couple things that I think are important. Don't ask for a takeout doggy bag. Just don't do that. Also, I would order on the same level as your interviewer. If they're ordering the chicken parm, don't order the Wagyu filet mignon. Don't do that. It'll be a great lunch that you will never have with any of them ever again. It'll be a really good steak, though. That's an idea, but then it also, what about independent thinking? then get something reasonable, like shrimp linguine. Sounds good to me, yeah.
Beat them to the order. Just say that. Put them on the spot.
When it's all said and done, make sure you thank the interviewer for the meal, but again, just once, don't go overboard. Also, this goes sounds right. Don't worry about completely cleaning your plate and whatnot. I mean, I know it's you don't want to waste food and anything, but make sure that you're not inhibiting the conversation that's taking place at the lunch or at the dinner. Like I said, the interview isn't over until you're in your car well away. When you're with potential employees when you're with employees at that company and they are viewing you as an intentional employee, newsflash, the interview is still on, okay? So make sure, you don't want to be inhibiting, the conversation. They're there to get to know you, so make sure that that is your number one goal, okay? Now, a couple other things. I have a few slides here on business cards. This isn't really important now. It will be when you get out of here. My job is to educate you, but your education hopefully doesn't end with you walking across the stage. You should be striving for continuing education throughout your career. I believe I just gave a homework on that topic. Am I right? Hopefully. So I want to talk about business cards. I actually just got back from Colorado on a research trip, and I met with Colorado DOT engineers and practicing engineers out there in the area on various issues. One of the first things I did when I was packing up my office is I had my portfolio. I stuck about a dozen or so business cards in my portfolio, and I took them with me. Okay, I stuck them in my portfolio because in a bag they had less chance to get crumpled up or bent. So make sure that you're storing your business cards in a location that they're not going to get bent up, and make sure that you take some with you. It's also a good idea to know where they are. I know where I keep mine. I keep them in my portfolio, okay? Which is a pretty reasonable place to keep them if you do a lot of traveling, okay? But if you're meeting with clients, get in the habit of always putting them in that one pocket. You put it in your jacket pocket or your shirt pocket or wherever. Make sure you always have them, or if you have them, in your purse or whatnot, make sure you know where they are. You don't want to be, where are they? I'm sorry, where are they? You don't want to be doing that. Just know where they are, okay? I always meet that one person at the conference who, as soon as they walk in, it's like they're a blackjack dealer. I don't even know who you are, dude. Thanks. They're the sales rep who's desperately trying to get their next contract. So they're just handing out business cards to everybody they can in the hopes that one day they get that phone call. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't place much value in that business card. I'm serious. And it's not just me. Nobody does. Okay? Your business card is a measure of you trying to professionally connect with someone. Just doing that, that's not what that is. So really a lot of what's going on in this slide is about that. Just recognize what that business card is. It's meant to begin that professional connection with another individual. Usually you want to give your business card out with your right hand. I know that sounds silly, but if you're doing international business, that actually kind of matters. Make sure when you hand your business card out, you're handing it out so that they can read it, and so on and so forth. One thing, keep your business cards up to date. Actually, for the first year that I was at Marshall, I wasn't in this building. I was over in the older engineering labs. I made it a point not to get business cards. I said, don't get them for me, because I knew in 6 months I was moving over here. So you could give me business cards if you want, but in 6 months I'm going to have to throw them away because the address is going to change. So, in fact, hopefully, if I pass my PE, I'm going to have to throw all my business cards away again because I'm going to have to put PE on it. So,
Yeah. Gregory Michelson.
Uh,
Dr. Gregory Michelson.
Are you done? All right. Also, don't use somebody's business card as if it's a Post-it note, unless there's a reason. So for instance, I work with a particular bridge fabrication company, and I met let's say a few of them in Colorado, and then there's one of them like, okay, I need to send some data to. And I met like 4 or 5 different reps. I might make a note, okay, send the data to that one person. That's fine. But, again, it's an item of respect, so don't just treat it like it's just a Post-it note, okay? Don't shove it in people's faces. Again, don't be the blackjack dealer. If you're wanting to make that professional connection, ask for a business card. And that's important for the interview process. If you find during your interview process there's a particular individual that you think, okay, this is important, I need their contact information for what's going on down the line, ask for their business card, okay? Nobody's going to expect college students to have business cards, although you can get a few business cards, I think, printed at Career Services. They'll actually make business cards for you. That's cool, I guess. So yeah. It's cool. Do you have it? Has anybody gotten any from Career Services? Well, it might have your name, it might have your degree, when you're expected to graduate, your address, your phone number, your email address.
Almost employed.
PS, no, that's land surveyor. PS, professional surveyor. Can't put that in.
DOT license placard.
Yes.
Licensed, right?
Yeah.
Licensed.
Good until I think June of next year.
Yes, sir.
You are actually pulling out the cards.
I think I threw mine away. I was using it as a bookmark. Yeah, it's gone.
What was it? There was a student who said something. So if you need something to put on your resume, you can say you were Times Person of the Year for 2006.
I think it was 8. Was it 6?
Because you were the Person of the Year for 2006. That's so. Don't do that. Yeah, don't put that on your resume, please. Please, God, don't put that on your resume.
So if you're looking for a company, but you want to get a job with a different company, you give them a business card. The current company you're at, if they ask for one, or should you have a different one in that case?
That's an interesting question. I'll say this. This is what I would tend to do if I was in that that scenario. So first off, I don't know that I'd be handing business cards out if I was working at company A and they were actively trying to snatch me up. But really nowadays, most of those communications are going to occur through email. So probably what I would do is if you have, your name at some firm, some, michelsonengineering.com, maybe create another email address that's, your name at gmail.com, and then just use that email address for those types of communications. Because there's something to be said about you're using your employer's resources for another firm's practice. You know what I mean? Especially in the consulting world where your firm's operational expenses are covered by their clients. You know what I mean? Their clients are paying for a certain number of tasks to be done, and you're using those resources to get another job. You know what I mean? So get a Google Gmail account or something like that. That's what I would do. That's just me. So that's a good question, though.
What about applying for a job within the same place that you work? Do you obviously not bring a business card whenever you are, but
think a business card's necessary. And I don't think it's that big of a deal at that point, like if you're hiring internally. One other point, let me bring this up. On your resume, is it your Marshall email address or is it yankeesfan206@gmail.com? Use your Marshall email address. Use your, I mean,
What if your Marshall email address is inappropriate?
How did that
what?
Yeah, they might think that I may not be a smart ass.
What is it?
Strawberry 69.
So I had a buddy in graduate school who was from Calcutta, and his last name was cut off a little bit for his WVU email address, and it was like his first initial of his first name and then the rest of his last name, but they cut it off. And where they cut it off, like in Bengali, it was a curse word. So it didn't matter like in America, but when he applied for jobs in India, he had to change his email address. I don't think you got anything to worry about. I don't think you got anything to worry about. It's your Marshall email address. Everybody knows those are automatically generated. And what's that?
So therefore, I didn't know they really know that.
Like not even trying to be funny. Like they really know that this is
You're talking about employers?
Yeah.
I would think so. Like, are you saying you had an experience where?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Like the guy who was hiring me didn't think about it, but somebody else is like, "Did you make that?" I'm like, "No, they just gave it to me." He's like, "That's awful."
In all seriousness, you may be able to make a request with IT to develop like a secondary email address. A lot of professors, I never worried about it because my email address where it's just Michelson at Marshall, it's pretty straightforward. But there are some professors who have, like they'll have like, Smith at Marshall, but because they're a faculty, they might say, well, John.Smith at Marshall. And they actually sort of have two email addresses, and then it can forward. But if you're in that scenario, maybe ask IT and see what they say. I'm not kidding. I mean, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. All right. Any questions about the interview process? This is important. I don't think that any of your other courses at Marshall probably talk about this stuff. I mean, Career Services does, but guys, I want you to get a job commensurate with a paycheck. I'm sure you do too.
So if you're at a dinner interview
I do have one story though, but go ahead.
and they offer you a drink, like alcoholic, do you accept it still then? Or would it be okay in that instance to deny it?
Honestly, I would deny it. Yeah.
And if they insist?
You don't need to be working there. Seriously, I'm not kidding.
Okay.
I would deny it. That's what I would. I mean, you want to be putting your best foot. Honestly, I'm not saying like one beer or one glass of wine is going to, throw you on the other end of sobriety, but you do want to be putting your best foot forward. And let's just be frank, you can't do that with alcohol. You just can't. So I'd say no. And I would politely say, if it's the night before your interview, just say you want to, I violated interview rules right there. I left my phone on, but I already got it done. So, what I would do is if it's the night before your interview, say, I'm had a long day of traveling, like to get some sleep or something like that. But if they're insisting on stuff, you don't need to be working there. Period. Yeah. That's my opinion.
So they'll take you out to dinner or something the night before your interview?
It's depending upon the job. For my interview here at Marshall, yeah, I went out to dinner the night before, but because my interview was all day, so yeah, my interview started. I think the day of the week, I think I interviewed on a Wednesday. My interview started Tuesday at 5 p.m. and didn't end until Wednesday at 6 p.m. That whole time, that was an interview. Well, no, but I mean, even then, I had to make sure I was up on time, that I was, I mean, it all matters. So you don't want to be late going, So I'll tell you a funny story. In fact, getting ready for my interview at Marshall, I was a non-abrasive TA at WVU.
Don't look, that was his word.
I know, I looked at him.
Look over here, though.
So I did this.
Don't come for me on this.
I was a non-abrasive TA at WVU, and I was the steel bridge guy. I mean, that's what my area is. So when the steel bridge team would have questions about fabrication, so on and so forth, they came to me. And so it was about a couple days or so before my interview, and they said, you ought to like spy on Marshall's bridge for us and like get a couple pictures of it. I said, what? I said, yeah, like snap a couple pictures of it so we know what we're up against. I said, let me explain something to you. I'm going down to Marshall in the hopes that they give me a job commensurate with a paycheck. You want me to spy on their bridge for you? Like, I don't think you seem to understand. Because if anything, I'm giving them secrets about your bridge. Frame of reference. So they got a chuckle out of that. And Marshall won the bridge competition that year. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but really. No, no, I don't even, yeah. I just wanted to continue the laughter a little bit.
That's good comedy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's all about that. It's all about
You're
that.
gonna be the abrasive guy, but you're gonna be the funny guy.
What's better, honestly?
Yeah. I don't know. Dr. Wade was pretty funny last semester. I don't know. So I don't know how he's in this semester.
Y'all just letting the pressure get to you. That's what it is. Stuff's too easy. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the interview process? And I'll also entertain this. Does anybody have any questions about the employment process in general? I'm talking about your resumes. I'm talking about interviews, networking. I mean, this whole process. I mean, we're talking about we spend so much time in my classes talking about beam deflection equations and shear stirrup layouts. We don't talk about this stuff a lot. And I imagine many of your other engineering courses are very similar. This is just as important, okay? Seriously, this is your careers. You've been here for 3 or 4 years trying to get a college degree for this. This is what you're here for. So if you've got any questions about this, please, I want to make sure that you're feeling comfortable about this. I want you all to succeed. I want every single person in this room to get a job they want when they get out of here. And I want to do what I can to help you. So, any questions? All right. That being said, this concludes part 1 of this course. All right. Part 1 of this class is our former senior engineering seminar. And this is what we did in senior engineering seminar, everything up until now. From here on out, it's project time. So what I'm going to do is this. Next week, I'm going to give you some general parameters about your project. But next week, we're also going to talk about what you all want to do for the rest of the semester. And what I mean by that is we can talk about the project. There's some activities we do need to engage in regards to that project, but there is still that FE exam. How many of you are planning to take the FE exam this semester? That's not enough. How many are taking it in the spring? If everybody's hand didn't go up, there's something wrong with that. I want to see everybody in here take that exam. I know that Every single person in this room has the capabilities to pass it, period. And I want to see you do that. So let's just say this. Just think about it a little bit. Think about what you want to talk about in regards to that. I know that there are some review sessions that the mechanical engineering staff is working on as we speak, but if there are some civil-related topics that you'd like to discuss, let me know. But recognize we don't have an infinite amount of time, so be choosy. All right? That's all I got. See y'all next week. Don't forget your assignments that are due. We got a pretty successive set of assignments coming up. Oh, goodness. Next week, you got your resume due. Hold on, what? Yep.
Was their cover page due on the cover of?
No, just the continuing ed and the ethics paper.
Where did it say
Or-
that?
or-
I didn't see it.
Because I was gonna do.
It was on the syllabus, and it was in that email that I
In the
wrote.
syllabus, okay.
And that email that I wrote.
Okay.